Thank you, Sanjay. We are keen to work with Indian businesses to help them accelerate their recovery. The pandemic is seriously disrupting lives, livelihoods, and organizations. Companies are navigating the crisis by building resilient and digitally enabled business models. Many customers and partners that I speak to are reinventing their strategies based on plans they drew up during the pandemic. Today, I'm joined by four esteemed gentlemen from the field of technology. Mohit Kapoor, Group CTO and Head of Technology, Mahindra Group. Ramesh Lakshminarayanan, CIO and Group Head of IT, HDFC Bank. Mohit Saxena, Co-founder and CTO, InMobi. And Piyush Singh, Senior Managing Director, India Market Unit Lead and Lead Growth and Strategic Client Relationships, Asia Pacific and LATAM, Accenture. Thank you, everybody, for generously making time for this discussion. But let me start with you, Mohit Saxena, from InMobi. The pandemic is accelerating digital consumption for businesses and for consumers. How is this changing InMobi Group? And what are you focusing on as you build a future for the business?
I think this pandemic is something that no one ever seen anything in life, and nobody was prepared. But I think I see, I saw this pandemic as a big opportunity because many company like us, we were trying to be completely digital for last 4 or 5 years, and we made some good progress. But this event has forced us to basically see things and work in a completely different way. Remote working from home used to be a very big taboo, and we all believe that you can't build right product unless you hustle people into a room, you do brainstorming, you do that whiteboarding, and that led to a lot of lack of processes, and rather even not a good documentation, a lot of tribal information where people have to come together to make any effective progress. But what is surprising it that this pandemic has forced everyone to basically adopt to new ways of working in just matter of few weeks. You don't need people in a room. Everyone has to basically do a documentation or basically do their work, assuming that nobody is going to be there in that room with them while they're working. So in that sense, I think it has really transformed how we are working with our team together. There is a very increased level of collaboration, smoothing of all the process, top-notch documentation where you have to really not leave anything for guesswork for another person, so that they can quickly read it and start from there. So, and we are not alone. Every company I talk to and every company that we interface, I think this wave of digitalization has just covered up last 10 years. What we all were trying to do. So there is something positive over here.
Great to hear that. Uh, Ramesh, moving on to yourself. When I look at HDFC Bank, one of the largest banks in this country, and how you've adapted to the scenario in light of the pandemic while helping both corporate customers and consumers navigate through the crisis. How are you rethinking your products, services, operating models to adapt to this whole disruption?
Yeah, I think from more pandemic, no pandemic, I think HDFC Bank is in slightly different trajectory because frankly, we are, I see this as a pan out for the banking industry. I'm not just talking from only HDFC Bank's perspective. And I've spoken about it multiple times. I think the way we are seeing, the pandemic has brought the digitization to the core. We all know the way the entire delivery model of the banks have changed. Clearly, the pandemic has just accelerated that. Be it just the explosion in the UPI payment systems, be it in the way the products are being kind of offered on the channels today. It's a very, very different world. If you go back, let's say 18 to 20 months. But I think coupled with that, I think the banks also should see this as an opportunity, because what I see is that this pandemic has just accelerated that push to the digitization, and that means getting on to the new set of technologies, new set of platforms, because frankly, banking world is coming off a legacy, edifice, so to say, and it's important to make that transition, at a rapid rate. I think had we gone in the normal course, maybe we would have been little circumspect of, let's say, should we just get onto the cloud? How fast should we get onto the cloud? I think those discussions are today, not in the forefront. I think it's more about now let's get on and let's get it done quickly. I think that's the fundamental transformation. The technology architecture itself, the adoption from the bank side has gone a huge change, and we are seeing that pan out. Whether it's the the way the neo-banking structure is coming through, the way analytics is coming at the center of all the banking delivery systems. It's a very different world that we are seeing. Like as I said, that the classical container-ready, cloud-native microservices world. And clearly, I see this as the go forward. So banks should look at this as a great opportunity or a great, I would say, period for them to recast their technology. So in that sense, I like, just like Mohit said, for us, it's been an opportunity rather than looking at like a crisis.
Mohit from Mahindra, let me come over to you. Mahindra Group is one of the largest conglomerates in this country, and you're running businesses across multiple industries. And I'm sure the pandemic has created challenges for each one of them. It would be great to get your perspective on how Mahindra is managing through this crisis and the transformation that's underway to position, the business for the future.
Thanks, Bikram, for inviting me, and all the best for the second region launch for GCP.
Thank you.
You're right. Mahindra Group is a diverse conglomerate across auto, farm, agriculture, logistics, real estate, electric vehicles, finance. The only constant is customer expectations have changed. Whether we are changing fast enough or not is what my task is. I break it down to 4 simple things in my view. One is the focus on customer and employee journeys and the digital last miles mainly. That while we were doing digital in the back end, it is the last mile which was paper or shop or dealer or shop front oriented or branch oriented. And because of the pandemic, that has forced us to think through lockdowns on reinventing the business model. So first focus area for us is to digitize the customer journeys and employee journeys equally, because employees also are sitting at home. Second is better use of data. That earlier we were not necessarily forced to use data. Now we are forced to use data because you're not meeting the customer that much, and hence you have to know, and you have to make decisions based on data, whether which color of the car to make, what to price it at, what are the competitors doing, where to sell it, how to do digital advertising, how to spend and what. So those decisions are now data oriented. Third is where the cloud comes in, is accelerating the stack and building open stack, because increasingly this journey is partnership oriented. It's not just our branch, not just our shop, not just our portal. You have to partner with many companies to build an ecosystem, and that comes only if you build open stack. So that's kind of the third focus. And fourth is, to me, cybersecurity and data privacy. For us, it's all about doing good business, and that is to protect the customer data and also to look at the customer interest. So those are the 4 pivots mainly of our digital transformation, and we are in this journey, and many of these changes are one directional. They're not going to go back to old ways, which means better efficiency, a better experience for the customer, better productivity, innovation for the employees, and just keep doing it for a not long way in my view. So that's the way I see it.
It's wonderful to hear all 3 of you, who are going through, the heart of, or rather the core of transformation as a result of this pandemic, and see how positively all companies are taking this and using it as an opportunity to move forward. So Piyush, let me come over to you. Accenture has been partnering with enterprises across sectors to help them in digital reinvention of their business models. What are some of the key learnings that you believe Indian businesses will continue to carry forward as they chart this recovery and growth journey ahead?
Hey, Bikram, thanks. And again, all the very best with your launch. Happy to be here. Look, I agree. As the other panelists have said, I mean, the 2 things that emerge out of the current crisis. One is that the predictability of customer behavior has gone through even greater rapid change, right? I mean, or the unpredictability, if I should say. And the second part is that a deep need for empathy, because let's face it, all customers are in some kind of crisis, of a social or a health nature. So which means that business models have to become more empathetic. While, as Mohit Kapoor was saying, not being physically present. So how do you transform yourself? And that's a big change. And that's where what I call is the capital paradox, right? Because on one hand, your businesses are disrupted. So a typical business model says, well, put your hatchets down, conserve your capital, ride out the crisis. On the other hand, as we said, because of the need for greater empathy, the need for better understanding, you must invest to reinvent, right? So the one of the big learnings that the organizations that will come out successfully out of this will be how to manage that paradox successfully, which comes out of the fact that, how do you lay out a long-term strategy that your stakeholders can understand as to why you are unleashing a level of capital investment when old wisdom would have said, hunker down and put your hatchet down. So I think that's one of the big things, in terms of actions. I think other panelists have laid out very well. The only way out of this, or to go through this transformation will be to turn digitally native in terms of your business model first, and then obviously to enable that through a technology, architecture which is digitally native as well, right? And of course, in that journey, the underlying capabilities that a cloud-driven infrastructure provides is obviously well known. So from that perspective, the investments that you guys are making will surely enable that journey for our organizations.
Mohit Kapoor, you have been leading digital transformation agendas and are choosing to build this with cloud at the core. You spoke about this, where you spoke about the open stack, you spoke about data, cyber security, and a number of things that you're focused on. When you're building a digital first business model by co-innovating and co-building with partners like Google Cloud. We'd love to hear a little more about that.
Sure. So while we work with all the hyperscalers, and we work with Google in more than one ways, Android Auto, and you can think for auto company, Google has many maps, many use cases. But, I'll pick a few which are directly working on with GCP and are close to my heart as well. So one is around agronomy and tractor telemetry, where the simple mission is making the farmer more productive and the yield from their lands better, right? And this is done by giving the ability for trackability of the tractor, and the app equally uses AI and machine learning to help the farmer farm better. You can take a photo of a crop and the AI will tell you what potential crop disease is happening, and hence what organic and inorganic fertilizer, chemical can help, what pesticide to spray, etc. So we built that stack, and it's helping farmers becoming more productive. So that's close to my heart for the rural ecosystem. It's working very well. It comes as a part of the tractor. You may be aware, we are a leading tractor manufacturers, by units over the world, and probably the biggest in India. And hence all tractors have this facility available, and we call it farming as a service. So it's not just you guys who are doing PaaS and IaaS and SaaS. We do it as well. We're calling it FaaS, where farming as a service. So that's one. Second is financial inclusion in our Mahindra Finance business. That's a large listed business where the field lab is run on GCP, and it's a fully functional field lab, which are 10,000 field staff we have, covering almost all villages in India and all postal codes across over 1,000 branches. The field lab is a fully functional app where you can give a loan, reset a loan term, collect cash, and which I call assisted digital or phygital, where the farmer can do a UPI payment from their own app, or the field staff can be standing there and do it. And the best part of the app is that even if there is no signal, it still works. So it has edge intelligence, where the moment you are on 2G, then you go to 3G, then you go to 4G as you drive your motorcycle, and all the data you did in the field automatically syncs up. So these two, to me, amongst many things, these two things come to my mind because these are transformational in many ways, and they're changing the rural economy and our ability to help people live better, which is the sole purpose of doing better business and doing good business.
Thank you. That is very, very interesting, and motivating. Let me come to you, Mohit Saxena. What role is Google Cloud playing in InMobi's development and scaling of new products to support the changed consumer behavior and the demands that you're seeing through the pandemic?
So I think one thing that I would mention prior to getting into that is this pandemic has also changed the consumer behavior drastically, especially the new age digital crowd. I mean, with this lockdown and being at home, it also opens up a huge amount of time that people spend on these phones. And the way you have to see the consumer behavior and the way you have to service it, the way we do it in Glance and Raposo, where we show content that are relevant to that user, you can't bucket them into cohort anymore. Everyone is individual.
Yeah.
And in a consumer business, right now you live in a world where information is everything, and it needs to be on time, and it needs to be very customized according to what I like and what I don't like. So when you combine all these three things together, performance, latency, and absolute precise relevance, I think, I won't be kidding if I say one company that has done it over the time or is best is obviously Google. So it's not about, having the GCP or rather infrastructure to take care of performance, latency, and helping us building next stage AI system, that can, create a social graph or user graph for every user. It is also learning from the experience, because AI and ML is a science that has been, is the knowledge that has been generated over last 15 to 20 years, and some of the brightest minds have worked in companies like Google, and we want to learn as fast as possible, because I think I'm a very firm believer that one can save huge amount of time with, if we can just avoid reinventing the wheel. So I think we work very closely with Google team. We try to learn as much as possible where they have spent 10-15 years going through the hard process of iterating, experimenting, and succeeding. So the way I see this relationship is, one is a physical attribute that we receive, it's like performance, scale, reliability, and all that component, and then there is a logical know-how, which to me is very important, because we want to be there for every user whenever they want us, and we want to be as precise as possible, so that the content always remain interesting. And the last but not least, India is a very big country. We have a lot of vernacular, different languages, different contexts, and social fabric, and we want to be very inclusive in that format as well.
Thank you. Ramesh, coming over to you. As you're accelerating this technology-led transformation, this journey that you've undertaken, what are some of the areas that you are prioritizing? And how is Google Cloud helping you with these initiatives?
Well, like as I said, for us, it's a matter of what I would say making that pivotal change, right? Because banks have been very, very reluctant to go on cloud, and frankly, like as I said, it's become more of a necessity now. I would look at the partnership with GCP in two buckets. One, obviously, from the technology perspective, in terms of if you see the way the digital explosion has happened. I think one of the biggest, just look at the UPI ecosystem, and I keep coming back to that. It's almost a 250-300% increase over last 18 months, and that's like a huge. And why is it huge? Because ultimately the right comes to the bank. While the whole ecosystem takes the feeds, but finally the rights come to the bank. And rights, the banks have been doing the rights in a traditional RDBMS linear way. On their core banking. So fundamentally, this is a dichotomy that cannot kind of scale up if the same situation goes, right? So clearly we are looking at GCP, for example, on very interesting partnerships in terms of how do we look at, of course, just from a core technology scale up on cloud, but also looking at what I would call as event-based technology movements, where you're literally kind of bringing in the ability to orchestrate transactions on an event basis, because UPI is here to stay. You will fundamentally get lesser and lesser transaction amounts, but the higher volumes will come through, and with NUE coming in, other payment ecosystems coming in. So it's absolutely clear that both from a horizontal scaling and from a way that you govern the transactions, the thought process have to change, and that's where we are partnering with GCP in some of these very interesting ways. So take a simple example. If you were to take a customer journey on a 10-second end-to-end basis on a UPI, not just UPI, on any payment ecosystem, where are the levers? Yeah, of course, the network, the cloud compute, and then the core write, three critical parts. And there is very limited scope to play around. And that's where I think the engineering would come into picture in terms of saying, how do we really kind of finish this transaction? And when you load this ecosystem with millions of the transaction and then doing that kind of an orchestration is clearly an area that we are looking. And you know that Bikram, we've been working with you in terms of in that direction. The other part, obviously, like as I said, as banks themselves, like I said, would eventually move their cloud into their core banking into a microservices driven cloud architecture. I think time has come. Just doing API, APification from the front end doesn't help. I think those days are gone, frankly, and that's where I see the core banking itself as a kind of myriad of microservices that's going to come through across different core systems. And all of this, has to nicely kind of get onto the cloud infrastructure. Of course, that's where I think the transition from a classical on-prem to a hybrid cloud and then eventually to a full cloud would be a kind of a journey. But clearly, we're partnering with GCP in very, very closely in those areas, and we also see a lot of focus around changing the customer experience. The third piece that I wanted to bring is the bank have been largely have been not fighting the front end battle, and it's a battle that the GPAs and the Paytms have been doing. I think for banks also it's important to kind of look at the front end experience, and that's another area that we believe developing, and that's where some of the Google technologies, and it's not just the GCP part, and the Google technologies come to the forefront from the front end perspective. And again, that some of it we are clearly adopting, working, co-partnering with GCP to kind of change our front end experience also. So largely, these are three buckets I would like to summarize: the payment ecosystem, scalability, the core banking, push into the cloud, and then the front end re-engineering, and all of these three areas form the core of the partnership, the way we see this.
Thank you, Ramesh. It's amazing how clearly you're thinking about what is a very, very complex and a number of decade old architectures and technology stack. So it amazes me how clearly you're thinking about this. Thank you. Piyush, coming to you. How are you seeing these Indian businesses progressing ahead on cloud adoption? What are the long-term benefits or value that you think companies can unlock with the cloud?
The challenges that come along with the digital footprint that the customer leaves behind has been shifting with availability of and evolution of technology. Earlier, the big challenge was, can I find enough digital footprint of a customer? Well, that went away because people started being digitally native. Then the second thing came along, which was about, can I even assemble all of that data together, right? And then the third was, if I assemble that data, can I quickly respond quickly enough or into use of that data? In my view, these two big elements of that need have been massively accelerated with adoption of cloud, right? The ability to assemble data, to be able to launch on top of it, useful insights. Now the battle has shifted to, can you consume it? Because as I'm sure the panelists and you would agree, today with those organizations that are rapidly adopting cloud native architecture, they can assemble data together, they can build insights on it. The big question is, can the business consume that insight in time and offer that to the end customer? What cloud is enabling, you all, the hyperscalers, you are obviously one of the leaders in it, are enabling in the market today is the elimination of the key roadblock into, as Mohit Saxena said, hyper-personalization of offering to customers, as well as the speed of response to the market, right? Now the battle has to shift towards, can the business consume it? Can it offer it in time to the end customer for that to turn into a value for the end customer?
True, very true. My final question to all four of you. What is the one new possibility for your business that you're excited about, along with the launch of the second Google Cloud region in India? Let me start with Ramesh, yourself.
This has been a ask actually, Bikram, because I do see active architectures as the core. I mean, you can keep saying that, but zone architectures are good. But truly active architectures are the need of the hour. And I think the Delhi zone clearly gives us that flexibility. And like as I mentioned, it's a very core to the way we would look at an active structure. So that's the most exciting part for my mind.
Great. Mohit Saxena, if I could come to you next.
Yeah, so on top of that, I think India is a huge country, and especially North is a very populous area. So being a center over there, definitely certainly help us in latency and providing the right performance to a huge group of users that we have from that region.
Sure. Mohit Kapoor, what about yourself?
So I would say outstanding customer experience and a resilient supply chain, because supply chain resiliency is very important for us. We've seen the disruptions in the last 24 months, and we have to prepare for it. And better use of AI, I would think.
Piyush, what about yourself?
One of the key challenges with any evolving technology in cloud, I still put in the evolving bucket, is availability of capability, right? With a new hub, a new region, you will be able to deploy more capability in India in this regard, and that will be a massive help for adoption and also greater confidence in the businesses to go ahead and adopt, because people are still looking for deep depth of architectural and other capabilities in the area of cloud. You are putting a big impetus by showing that investment.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. I can't thank you enough for your partnership. I'm sure our audiences will find your experiences and insights useful to help their own business and digital-led transformation journeys.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me hand it over from here to Mitesh Agarwal, who heads customer engineering for us and will take us through more details about the new Google Cloud region in Delhi NCR. Thank you, everybody, once again.